Good morning, afternoon, or evening. This is DeathNavy, and today I'm going to be reviewing Altria Bunny. You call her what you will. Altria Ruler, Artoria Bunny. I'm going to stick to what I call her, but you may call her whatever you would like. So, first things first, the bunny that I have on my account is level 90, 1,000 fold plus a few additional, bond 11, pretty good skills, NP1. So she was my second SSR on this account. I've been using her for about 2 years now, so I kind of know how she works and how I would grade her. My overall grade of her before I begin is going to be a 5 out of 10, and let me explain to you why. So starting with her skills, she does have a 40% battery with an evade, and then a delayed attack buff for a turn. The attack buff you're hardly going to use, if ever, just because it's delayed, it's hard to judge. You're mainly going to be using it for the battery or for the defense, the evade. That's what I usually use it for, is the battery. But if you need to get out of a situation, you also have the evade. The attack buff is just a slight bonus. Second skill is a card reshuffle, much like the Mystic Code. That's really it. It will get a buff in a year, but for now, it's just a simple card reshuffle, and that is that. Nothing too big. And then, of course, her third skill is an attack buff, and she also gets a star absorb as well. So it allows you to really go off with her if you want to go off with her. And then her NP is a Buster AoE. It gives her a Buster, Quick, and Art buff before activation, and then you deal a bunch of damage, and you get a little bit of NP refund at the end, much like her Lancer version. Now, let me go over the positives. She's an offensive ruler in a class which really doesn't have an offensive ruler. Of course, you have a Moxa, but even he is more supportive with his buff removal and other upgraded skills. He's more support than offensive, though you could use him for offense. Sherlock, although he has extremely high attack and he's really good and he has crit buffs, he's more support. So here you have a ruler which is more offensive based, which is very nice. You have Estrella, of course, too, but she's the first 5-star offensive ruler in a class where offensive rulers don't really exist as of the moment. And her skills work very well with that. She has a defense skill. She has a card reshuffle just in case, her RNG is bad. And then you have the attack buff, which pairs nicely with her Buster NP, so she can really hit hard. Now let me get to the downsides, which are very many. First of all, the overcharge on her NP is not that useful. The buff that you get, the Quick Art and Buster buff, isn't really that much. And unless you're obviously Brave Chaining, you're not going to make use of it because it only lasts that same turn. Another thing is, the biggest downside is her HP and attack stats. Her attack stat is extremely, extremely low. Even, maxed out here, she's only 10,000 attack, 10,600. So she is going to be hitting like a very, very wet noodle majority of the time. And even with all her buffs, she's really not doing that much damage. On top of that, she is ruler class, so unless you're up against Moon Cancers or Berserkers, she's going to be doing neutral damage, and neutral damage with the low attack, you're not really doing much. So you have this super high HP, super low attack. It does not work well with her kit. Now let me get to what I tend to use her for on my account. So being my second SSR, I used to use the absolute balls out of her. Like, I used her all the time, which is why she's bond 11. Although the last few 100,000 bond were tough to get, just because I found it difficult to put her into parties after I got my account set up. But usually I use her for soloing. So, and I don't mean like, Georgios, Leonidas. I mean like an actual team in the front to do the quest. And if all else fails, she's in the back and she can solo if she has to, because that's what she's good at, is soloing. I don't find her very useful in team comps because, she has such a low attack. Her skills are so selfish, other than, of course, the card reshuffle. And she has an offensive NP, so she's not very good at support. Now, you can find examples of me using her. I do have the Sigurd Ice Palace JP video, which I did a couple years back. And then I also have the Helen Kyo, what's her name, Suzuka fight, which I use her at the end. So you can kind of see where my thought process is when putting her in parties. I wouldn't recommend rolling for her. If, of course, I'm not going to stop you. She is very nice. Very, very nice. But as far as gameplay goes, you won't be seeing yourself using her very often unless, of course, you have nothing else. If you really want to use her, I'm trying to think of C's to recommend here. You could, of course, use Victor of the Moon. K-Scope probably isn't all that great because she does have the battery, so you can maybe put something with a half starting charge. But honestly, whenever I use her, I usually don't even put a CE on her because the buff that she gets from Victor and other offensive CEs is so meager because her attack is so low. It's not worth the cost. And then, of course, you can put supporting Cs like 20-30 on her, but then that goes against, what she is, which is an offensive ruler. So, there you go. One thing I do like using on her is actually her Bond CE, because, first of all, it saves costs, and second of all, it gives a crit and buster buff, it's crit, and then it's buster attack for the entire party while she's on the field. Which is very nice, especially with her kit being very crit-oriented. It's a very, very good Bond CE if you want to throw that on her. And I usually do, unless I don't have cost, then I just don't run her with a CE. So overall, 5 out of 10. She is an offensive ruler with such a low attack that it literally does not make a difference. Her strengths are just straight up surviving and soloing. So if you want to use her, throw her at the back of your party, run a proper party, and then use her at the end. Or I did actually use her in the 90 plus Neurofest node, where I used her card reshuffle, because her card reshuffle actually gets a buff, which makes it so you can delete a ally's cards from the rotation. So if you have, let's say, an Ishtar, a Bunny, and a Scotty, you can delete the Scotty cards. That way you're only getting Ishtar and Bunny cards for the next turn. And it also gives you a crit buff and an NP gen buff, which is very, very nice. But even still, that's very RNG. So if you look at my video that I made of the 90 plus node, you'll see it's extremely RNG based because I still had to rely on getting Ishtar's cards to actually run the node, and I'd only 3-turn it like 60% of the time. So yeah, 5 out of 10. Would not recommend, but hey, if you want her, go ahead. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you for joining in, and I hope to see you in the next one where I will be reviewing Okita J. Soji, one of the cutest yet scuffed assassins. Have a nice day.